Think about the last time you grabbed a jar of pasta sauce off the shelf. Maybe you were in a hurry. Maybe you trusted the label that said vine-ripened tomatoes and slow simmered goodness. Maybe you figured it was just pasta sauce, and how bad could it be? Here's the thing, the pasta sauce aisle is one of the most deceptive sections in your entire grocery store. Every single jar promises you Italy. Every label is drenched in red and green, maybe a little rustic serif font, maybe a drawing of someone's imaginary grandmother who definitely never touched the recipe. They all want you to believe you're getting something real. But what you're often actually getting is tomato paste, water, sugar, a handful of additives with names you can't pronounce, and just enough actual tomato to legally call it tomato sauce. And the worst part? Some of these jars cost you $8, $9, $10. You're not buying convenience, you're buying the theater of convenience. The real kicker is that there are brands out there, some cheap and some not, that actually put real tomatoes in the jar, that actually care what's on the ingredient list, that don't lean on citric acid and natural flavors to fake depth. So today, we're sorting them out. 5 brands you should walk right past and 5 that actually earned a place in your pantry. Let's start with the worst offenders. Brand number 10, the Prego Traditional. Prego. Traditional has been sitting on American shelves since 1981, and in that time, it has perfected one thing, the art of tasting like nothing in particular. This is the sauce that invented the concept of aggressively mediocre. It doesn't taste bad exactly. It tastes like the idea of tomato sauce described by someone who has never eaten tomato sauce. The texture is gummy and weirdly uniform, like someone blended a can of tomatoes with a handful of cornstarch and called it a day. There's a sweetness up front that doesn't come from any tomato you've ever met. It comes from added sugar, which shows up in the ingredient list early. The flavor progression goes sweet, vaguely acidic, then nothing, like a sentence that just stops. And get this, a half cup serving carries around 650 milligrams of sodium. That's 28% of your recommended daily intake in roughly 4 tablespoons of sauce. For reference, that half cup is supposed to cover 1 serving of pasta, which if you've ever cooked pasta for yourself, you know is approximately a third of what you'll actually use. What makes this particularly infuriating is the ingredient list. Tomato puree, which is just tomatoes and water, is first. So far fine. But then you hit modified food starch, sugar, and natural flavor within the first 6 ingredients. Natural flavor is the food industry's all-purpose mystery ingredient. It can mean almost anything. In a jar that's supposed to taste like tomatoes, it means the tomatoes alone couldn't get the job done. Prego survives because it's everywhere. It's on every shelf in every grocery store in America. It's the default, and they're banking on you not reading the label because you're already late getting dinner on the table. Bottom line, this is diet theater dressed up as Italian cooking. Brand number 9, Ragu Old World. Style traditional, Ragu has a long history and an even longer list of ingredients. The Old World style traditional sounds like something your great aunt made in a cast iron pot for 4 hours. What you're actually getting is a sauce, so processed it barely resembles tomatoes in either taste or texture. The consistency is thin in some bites and strangely thick in others, and not in the way a good sauce varies. It varies the way a sauce varies when it's been stabilized with multiple thickeners. The tomato flavor is aggressive on the front end and then disappears completely, like a bad first date that talks loudly for 10 minutes and then has nothing left to say. Here's the thing about Ragu's ingredient list. It reads like a chemistry assignment. Tomato puree, water, soybean oil, salt, sugar, dehydrated onions, citric acid, spice, natural flavor. That soybean oil is there to give the sauce body because without it, the tomato to water ratio wouldn't have enough presence to feel substantial. You are, in a very real sense, eating oil emulsified tomato water. A half cup serving hits around 600 milligrams of sodium and has added sugar as a listed ingredient at roughly $2 to $3. A jar, it feels like a deal, but here's where it gets tricky. A $2 jar of Ragu contains so little of what actually matters that you're not saving money. You're just buying cheap filler with a red label. Ragu survives on 2 things, price and shelf dominance. They're banking on you grabbing the familiar jar without stopping to ask why it took them this many ingredients to make something that still tastes like almost nothing. Brand number 8, Sahara. Classico tomato and basil. Classico positioned itself slightly above the Prego and Ragu tier. The glass jar feels premium, the label is elegant, the name implies Italian authenticity. And then you open it and realize the jar was doing most of the heavy lifting. The texture is smooth to the point of being soulless. No chunk, no variation, nothing that suggests a tomato was ever present in its natural form. The basil flavor is present in the way a candle that smells like basil is present. You're aware of it, but it has nothing to do with actual basil. It's thin, muted, and forgettable in a way that takes genuine effort to achieve. And get this, Classico's ingredient list includes citric acid and natural flavors alongside tomatoes. Citric acid in a tomato sauce isn't inherently bad since tomatoes have natural acidity, but when it appears as a listed additive in a sauce that should already be acidic from the tomatoes themselves, it means the tomatoes weren't doing enough work on their own. The flavors had to be artificially sharpened. A half cup runs around 450 milligrams of sodium, which is more reasonable than some competitors. But what makes this particularly frustrating is the price point. Classico regularly sells for $5 to $7 a jar. At that price, you're paying for a premium experience and getting a performance of premium instead. The most telling thing about Classico is who buys it. People who want to feel like they're upgrading without fully committing to actually reading labels. They're banking on the glass jar and the Italian-sounding name doing the convincing for them. It mostly works. Brand number 7, Hunt's Traditional Pasta Sauce. Hunt's exists in a strange category. It's aggressively priced, often under $2, and it tastes exactly like you paid under $2. This is not a sauce that's trying to deceive you. There's something almost honest about how little it's pretending to be. The problem is that honest about being bad doesn't make it good. The flavor profile is tomato adjacent, meaning it hits the basic notes of acidic, slightly sweet, vaguely savory, without committing to any of them convincingly. The texture is thin and watery, and it runs off pasta rather than clinging to it, which is one of the most demoralizing things a pasta sauce can do. You put it on your pasta, and within 30 seconds, it's pulled at the bottom of the bowl like it was trying to escape. Here's the thing about Hunt's ingredient list. It's actually shorter than most in this tier. Tomatoes, tomato puree, salt, sugar, spices. That's almost respectable. But the real kicker is that spices, as a catch-all, tells you nothing. And the sugar, again added sugar in a tomato sauce, reveals that the tomatoes don't have enough natural sweetness or depth to stand on their own. A half cup carries around 550 milligrams of sodium. At under $2, Hunt's is probably the most honest bad sauce on this list. They're not pretending to be artisanal. They're not charging you for a glass jar and a story. But you're still getting watery tomato paste in a can, and no amount of honesty makes that taste good. Bottom line, this is the sauce you buy when you've given up, not the sauce you buy when you care. Brand number 6, Bertolli, tomato and basil. Bertolli trades heavily on an Italian identity that its ingredient list does not fully support. The branding is confident. Olive oil featured prominently. Italian aesthetic all over the label, a name that sounds imported. But here's where it gets tricky. Bertolli tomato and basil is made in the United States, and the olive oil in the recipe is present in quantities so small it barely affects the flavor. The sauce itself is thick and overly sweet, with a tomato flavor that's been rounded off into something generic. The basil is an afterthought. You can detect it somewhere in the back of the flavor profile, behind the sugar and the starch doing its best. The texture clings to pasta adequately, but has a slightly starchy finish that coats your mouth in a way no fresh tomato sauce ever would. And get this, the ingredient list includes modified cornstarch and sugar within the first 8 ingredients. Modified cornstarch in pasta sauce is a thickening agent. It's there because without it, the tomato base isn't thick enough to feel substantial. That's not artisanal simmering, that's industrial texture management. At around $5 to $6 a jar, you're paying Bertolli for the story they're selling. The real kicker is that the story is almost entirely on the label. What's inside is a sweet, starchy, mildly tomato-flavored product dressed up in Italian cosplay. They're banking on brand recognition and the power of the word olive oil appearing somewhere on the packaging. For millions of shoppers, that's enough. If this is already saving you from a bad meal, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. And brand number 5, Muir Glen Organic Tomato Basil. Now we're in different territory. Muir Glen grows its tomatoes in California's Sacramento Valley and actually lets that be the whole pitch. No borrowed Italian mythology, no mystery ingredients carrying the flavor. Just tomatoes that were grown somewhere specific, processed minimally, and put in a can. The texture here is noticeably different from everything in the bottom 5. It's chunky without being aggressive, with visible tomato pieces that tell you something real went into the jar. The basil flavor is green and slightly herbal, not the manufactured basil flavor you get from sauces used in dried powder, but something that actually behaves like basil. The sauce clings to pasta instead of sliding off it. Here's the thing about the ingredient list: organic tomatoes, organic tomato puree, organic extra virgin olive oil, organic onions, sea salt, organic garlic, organic basil, organic black pepper, citric acid. That's it. 9 ingredients. Citric acid is the only one that's not a whole food. And in this context, it's being used to preserve natural acidity, not to fake flavor that the tomatoes couldn't provide. A half cup runs around 310 milligrams of sodium, which is genuinely lower than most competing sauces. At around $5 to $7, it sits in the same price range as Classico and Bertolli, except here you're actually getting something for your money. What makes this particularly worth noting is consistency. Muir Glen tastes like this across every jar because the sourcing is controlled and the process is simple. They're not managing complexity, they're managing quality. Bottom line, this is what a $5 pasta sauce should taste like. Brand number 4, Rao's Homemade Marinara. Rao's has become one of the most talked about pasta sauces in the country, and for once, the attention is warranted. This is a sauce that actually tastes like someone cooked it, not manufactured it, cooked it. The texture is loose and rustic, not gelled, not uniform, not padded with starch. It moves the way a real sauce moves. You can see tomato pieces, olive oil pooling on the surface, occasional herbs. The flavor is savory, gently acidic, and genuinely complex in the way that only happens when the base ingredients are strong enough to carry the whole thing without help. And get this, the ingredient list for Rao's marinara is Italian plum tomatoes, olive oil, onions, salt, garlic, basil, black pepper, oregano. 8 ingredients, no sugar, no starch, no citric acid, no natural flavor. For a shelf-stable jarred sauce, this ingredient list is nearly miraculous. Here's the thing, Rao's runs $8 to $10 a jar. That is a real number to spend on pasta sauce, and plenty of people balk at it. But the real kicker is that Rao's uses San Marzano-style Italian plum tomatoes, which are lower in water content and higher in natural sweetness. That's why the sauce doesn't need sugar or acid additives to taste balance. The tomatoes are doing their job. Rao's succeeds because it doesn't cut corners and charges you accordingly. They're banking on customers who've been burned enough times by cheap imitations to understand why the price is what it is. And increasingly, those customers are everywhere. Brand number 3, 365 by Whole Foods Organic Marinara. The skepticism about store brands is understandable, but 365 by Whole Foods Organic Marinara is a genuine exception to the rule that house brands are where quality goes to become economical. This sauce is simple, clean, and quietly excellent in a way that embarrasses several sauces, charging twice the price. The texture is smooth with occasional small tomato pieces. Not as rustic as Rao's, but substantial enough to feel real. The flavor is straightforwardly tomato forward. Bright, mildly acidic, with a gentle herbal note from basil and oregano that's integrated rather than sprinkled on top as an afterthought. The ingredient list is short and honest. Organic tomatoes, organic tomato puree, organic olive oil, organic onions, sea salt, organic garlic, organic basil, organic oregano, black pepper, citric acid. 10 ingredients, no added sugar, no starch, no flavor compounds. The citric acid is there purely for preservation, not for faking death. A half cup comes in around 340 milligrams of sodium, genuinely low by jarred sauce standards. And at around $4 to $5, it sits in the same price range as Classico and Bertolli, which means you have absolutely no excuse for buying those instead. What makes this particularly impressive is the value equation. You are getting a genuinely clean ingredient list, real organic tomatoes, and a sauce that tastes like tomatoes for the price of a medium coffee. They're banking on the Whole Foods customer who reads labels. The rest of the grocery store should take notes. And if you're finding this ranking useful, hit the like button. It really helps the channel cut through the noise. Brand number 2, Bianco di Napoli Marinara. Bianco di Napoli is the brand that people who are serious about pasta sauce point to when they want to make a point. Chef Chris Bianco, the James Beard award-winning pizza obsessive from Phoenix, partnered with organic farmer Rob DiNapoli to make a sauce that starts with the best possible tomatoes and does as little as possible to them afterward. The texture is bracingly fresh, loose, slightly chunky, with a brightness that you don't expect from anything that comes in a can. The flavor is clean and intensely tomato forward in the best way, sweet, acidic, and savory all at once, without any of those qualities fighting each other. It tastes like summer tomatoes processed at peak ripeness, which is exactly what it is. Here's the thing about the ingredient list. Organic whole peeled tomatoes, organic tomato puree, sea salt, organic basil, organic extra virgin olive oil. 5 ingredients, and that's it. The real kicker is that those 5 ingredients produce a sauce with more complexity than anything on the lower half of this list, because the tomatoes are actually good enough to carry the weight on their own. Bianco di Napoli runs around $9 to $11 for a 28-ounce can. At that price point, it's a deliberate choice rather than a casual grocery run. But for what you're getting, chef-curated, organically grown, minimally processed tomatoes, the price reflects actual value rather than manufactured prestige. They're banking on customers who understand that the tomato is the whole point. And for those customers, this is the gold standard. Brand number 1, Cento San Marzano, organic crushed tomatoes. Here's the thing about Cento San Marzano, organic crushed tomatoes. It barely counts as a sauce, and that's precisely why it wins. This isn't a jar of pre-seasoned, pre-flavored, pre-decided sauce. This is just crushed San Marzano tomatoes grown in the volcanic soil of the Agro Sarnese-Nocerino region of Italy, where the mineral content and climate produce tomatoes that are naturally sweeter, less acidic, and more complex than virtually any other tomato on the planet. The texture is unprocessed and alive, chunky, seedy, with visible tomato flesh and liquid that is clear red rather than the cloudy murk you get from over-processed products. The flavor is tomato without apology, rich, naturally sweet with an acidity that feels earned rather than manufactured. It doesn't taste like it's trying to be anything. It just tastes like a really exceptional tomato. The ingredient list contains exactly 3 things: organic San Marzano, whole peeled tomatoes, organic tomato juice, and sea salt. 3 ingredients. If you want basil, you can get the version with basil, which adds 1 more ingredient. That's it. No starch, no sugar, no citric acid, no natural flavor, no olive oil to fake richness the tomatoes don't have. A 28 ounce can run $5 to $7 and has around 260 milligrams of sodium per half cup serving. That's the lowest on this entire list. And get this, DOP certification, which stands for Denominazione di Origine Protetta, means these tomatoes are legally verified to come from a specific region in Italy and meet specific production standards. That's not marketing. That's a protected designation enforced by the Italian government. You will need to finish the sauce yourself. Cook it down with garlic and olive oil, season it, let it simmer for 20 minutes. Cento is banking on customers who want control over what they're eating, not a prepackaged flavor decision made by a product team in New Jersey. And if that's you, this is the near miracle at the end of the pasta aisle. Bottom line, proof that the fewer ingredients you need to list, the better the product usually is. Here's the takeaway from all of this. The pasta sauce aisle is a masterclass in manufactured trust. Every jar in that aisle wants you to believe you're buying tradition, authenticity, and someone's family recipe. Most of them are selling you modified starch, added sugar, and a label designed to make you feel nostalgic for something you never actually ate. The brands at the bottom of this list, Prego, Ragu, Classico, Hunt, Bertolli, survive because they're cheap, familiar, and everywhere. They're banking on the fact that most shoppers are moving fast and not reading labels. And for decades, that strategy has worked perfectly. You grab the jar with the familiar name, you cook your pasta, and you don't think too hard about why it tastes vaguely like sweet tomato-flavored water. But the brands at the top of this list, Muir Glen, Rouse, 365 Organic, Bianco di Napoli, and Cento, prove something important. Real tomatoes don't need sugar to taste sweet. They don't need starch to feel substantial. They don't need natural flavor to taste like tomatoes. When the ingredient is actually good, the list gets shorter. And when the list gets shorter, you start tasting what food is actually supposed to taste like. The most important thing you can do the next time you're standing in that aisle is flip the jar over and count the ingredients. Not the calories, not the fat content, the ingredients. If sugar is in the first 5, put it back. If you see modify anything, put it back. If you can't tell what natural flavor means, it's because the company doesn't want you to know. You're cooking dinner, not funding a chemistry project. You deserve real tomatoes. Hit subscribe if this changed how you'll shop for pasta sauce, and drop a comment telling us which ranking you think we got completely wrong.